Here is a copy of a medieval rebec that was one of the first bowed instruments in the 1100s, when the Crusaders brought back a bowed instrument from the East, the Middle East, called the Rebec, that the church adopted and took their plucked instruments and begun to bow them. I'll show you the psaltry in a moment, the bowed psaltry, which used to be plucked, and then it was enhanced, having the bow, which made it very ethereal. Coming back to the rebec, this is made out of a solid piece of pear wood, I think. It's been a long time, and you can see it has a dog rose instead of a spiral and pegs in the shape of a heart. Now you might wonder why, because that wasn't found on the medieval instruments, but this was a gift to me from Neil from the Early Music Centre in 1977, a year after I had found a lute while I was living in Islington. I went on a walk on an Easter Sunday in 77. No, it was 76. No, it was 77. I had a feeling in my soul that I should go for a walk, and I went for a walk around some shops in Islington that I'd not visited previously, and I came across the shop that had Turkish instruments in it. They had ouds and a few others, some sazbalmaz that were plucked instruments, mainly used for Eastern music. And I acquired, when I went into the shop, behind the counter on the wall was a beautiful looking instrument hanging on the wall, and it just rang out to me, and I asked the shop owner what it was, and he said he's not sure. It's some kind of oud type instrument, and I asked if he would sell it to me, and he said yes he would, £35. And I said, well, I think I can get 25, and I didn't have it on me. So he said, yes, okay. So I went back to where I was living in Perlin Road and borrowed the money from some fellow students, came back and bought the instrument, and I had it for a year, and I could see it was made by a master instrument maker. Very, very light, superb craftsmanship. But I couldn't really play it. I wasn't really a lute player, basic guitar player, but not a lute player. And a friend of mine, Graham Blench, who was studying music at the Royal College of Music, had been studying, but we then became fellow students at the London School of Eurythmy, and he was at the London School of Speech. We used to play music, and I said, I need a better instrument, a better violin. He said, well, why don't you sell the lute? So I said I didn't know where to take it to be valued. I didn't know how much it was worth. He said, go and see the makers at the Early Music Centre in Holland Park. The music centre, Early Music Centre at Holland Park. So I got on a tube, and I had made arrangements over the phone to have it valued. And when I got there, I had an hour in between lessons, and I had the lute wrapped up in a shawl, and when I arrived there, they asked, where can I have my lute valued? And the people in the shop said, go to the back, that's where the instrument workshops were. And they sent me to the back, and I came into this little room, about 15 foot square, and there was a man over the desk making these instruments and some others, early instruments. I was flabbergasted by them and intrigued, because I'd made a couple of instruments in my past, very rough. Made a harp out of jacaranda in Johannesburg that was part centaur and very inexperienced instrument making abilities, but I had a love for them. So I realised not much time left. I said, I've come to have my lute valued. And he said, go upstairs, and there was a single staircase leading to the room above, which is exactly the same size. And as I was going up these steep steps, the chap leaning over a lute soundboard he was making, carving the rose, looked up, and I'd started to unravel the head of the lute. And I said, I've come to have my lute valued. And he said, I made that. And when I got up to the top, I'd unwrapped it already, and he looked rather surprised. And he proceeded to tell me that it had been stolen from the wife of Neil downstairs, who was making these instruments a year ago at Christmas. And she loved it very much and missed it very much, and she was about to have a baby, and she would have loved to have had the instrument again. By the way, the lute maker was Michael Saunders, one of the world's best lute makers. And he called Neil upstairs, and they looked at the lute and looked at me and were quite shocked and asked me where I got that. And I said I'd found it in a Turkish instrument shop in Islington, and I'd paid £25 for it. And as I say, they looked shocked and surprised, and I handed it to Neil, and they said, well, what do you want for it? You know, how much do you want for it? And I said, I don't want anything, it's yours. And I said, but I would love to have an instrument that you were making downstairs, the Rebec. And we then became very good friends. I ended up working across, just down the road on a building site in the holidays, painting a building. And at my lunch break, I would go and pop into them and have mystical discussions about instruments and the makers. And I had talked about this and asked them for a wild dog rose because of its 5-petaled symbolism and its creativeness similar to the 5 fingers of a person's hand. And then the hearts of the pegs, obviously being a heart instrument because it's held here by the heart. So what transpired from then is I wanted to learn how to make instruments while I was doing my training, because I had a feeling I wasn't going to be able to earn much of a living being a eurythmist. And they suggested I go to the London College of Furniture, which I did, and then found myself studying under the tutelage of Stephen Barber, one of the world's greatest lute makers and theorbo makers, from soprano lutes to 7-foot long theorbos. And due to his 3 unfortunate events, one, he got hit on his bicycle by a hit-and-run driver and broke his ankle. 2, his landlady needed the basement he had his workshop in, so she wanted him out. And 3, his wife was pregnant. His girlfriend was pregnant. So I had a 6 weeks holiday coming up, and I said I would love to come work with you and help you free of charge, and he allowed me to, which he had never had anybody working for him, so it was a great privilege to work for him. And that's the mystical story behind this. And of course I then went to the London College of Furniture to learn how to make instruments and restore them, and that Crewth that I showed you earlier was under his guidance. So I'm just tuning it. I've tuned it a fifth. The strings are fifth apart. So this one is held by the heart, as you'll see in the medieval paintings, which makes it quite difficult to play, but you can't change position and there's no vibrato. So here's a 16th century wedding dance. So here is a set of three bowed psaltries I had made. I'll tell you the exact date, in 1980, January, when I was living in the beautiful hills of Rhondda in Wales, where my little family resided, and I chose to make one of these for my mother, and my late wife Rosie, as with most of my instruments, decorated these with her delicate skills as an artist and painter and drawer, and all kinds of, again you see the dog rose and jasmine and the butterfly, of course, and the dragonfly, and this is a Celtic design I designed and carved into the soundboard. And again, it's made from maple. The back and the sides are maple, and the belly is pine, Swiss pine. And here's the other one, slightly different. You can see this has got a lot more honeysuckle on it, and there's a butterfly hiding in there. Same sound hole. As I say, I made three at once. One was then when my auntie in South Africa saw what I had made for my mother, she commissioned me at the same time to have one. It's got this the worm that becomes the butterfly, and again the dog roses, and I had made a third one that somebody bought privately from me. Now what happened is my mother passed away, and this first psaltry was returned to me, and the second one that I made for my auntie, she passed away as well. And about 8 years ago, her daughter asked me, who was in America and she visited South Africa, asked me if I would like to have the psaltry back that I'd made for her mother. And of course I said yes. So she posted it to me in England. And the third one, I just one night happened to look on eBay on unusual instruments, and you won't believe this, but there was the third one. And it had transpired that the owner of that one had given it to an instrument maker to do some repairs on it, and had since died. And he had put it up on eBay. He didn't know how much it was worth, and when I told him I had made that, we were both flabbergasted, and I bought it for an agreed price, and that I've since given to my grandchildren in Ireland to play. So I'm going to improvise a little bit. These bows were made out of bamboo and, of course, horsetail hair, and very simple construction. It's the transverse bow before bows then were made like this, where they were almost inverted, and then the modern bows are completely inverted. So there you go. Now I don't play this very often. It is chromatic, and like I'd said, this was an 11th century, pre-11th century instrument as a psaltry, a plucked psaltry that the church used in the early music. And then after the bow was brought to the West, what we have is something incredibly ethereal. So I'll just try and improvise a little so you can get an idea of how it sounds. So something different from the last. This is a Welsh Crewth. It's supposed to be a 6-string instrument. I've lost one of the diapason strings, which were plucked in accompanying the melody. I made this under the instruction of one of the world's greatest lute makers, Stephen Barber, at the London College of Furniture, and it's a close copy to the Welsh Crewth in the Royal Albert Museum. It's made out of a solid piece of sycamore, carved out of a solid piece. And I love the shaping of it. I changed it ever so slightly, and this was the instrument, a more complicated one, played by the greater bards, the Welsh bards, to accompany their stories of their history from village to village and town to town, and they accompanied their stories with percussive and melodic and harmonic songs and melodies. And this instrument is unique in that it has a bridge like no other bowed instrument, where the bass side goes to the back of the instrument and the treble side sits on the top. And there are no sound posts as there are in the stringed instruments currently around. And it has quite a unique sound in this because of this. It's not a loud instrument, it's a very reflective instrument. And the designs on it, my late wife Rosie adapted these drawings of these Celtic animals that a woman Lynch, Sister Lynch, decorated her father's little wooden chapel in Ireland, covered every surface that was available. She covered them in these patterns of these mythical beasts. So this one it's got a Swiss pine guitar top, and these are fruitwoods, the pear tailpiece and a pear fingerboard, and then there's some bone, nut and takeoff points up there, and also the yoke here is also probably an ivory or a bone. I can't remember. It was 1979 I made it. So obviously I've got modern tuning pins, and it's a little bit out of tune because I don't have the key with me. It's in my studio. I'm going to attempt to play. It normally was played down here, but it's very awkward to play. It's very heavy because it's a solid piece of wood, so I'm going to help myself by playing it up here and play. Out of tune. It is awkward because you see the bridge is at an angle, so it's not the standard fingering. You've got to shift for the notes and obviously play it a bit more than I have in the last 50 years or so. Here's a slow air. I think it's called Thanksgiving. Here is the pocket violin, a Pochett, full length of 15 inches. Let's see, full length at 16 inches, I'm sorry. There we go. Length of the back for those interested and know these dimensions. It's 5 3/4 inches, or just under 15 centimeters. So it's very small. It's a Pochett, and supposedly it was a dancing master's instrument, but I don't know how they got enough sound out of it to allow anybody to dance, because it's such a meager sound. An excuse for a sound, extremely well made, very nice purfling, ebony fingerboards, pegs and tailpiece, figured maple, solid back, flamed. It's a nice Swiss pine top, say ebony pegs with pearl inlay, and a tiny bow to go with it. It's not more than, I'll tell you exactly, it's just a couple of inches longer than the pocket violin. So I would imagine it's about 17 inches. Yes, it's 17 inches approximately to the end. As I say, it sounded very meager. You're supposed to hold it down here, but it's so small. Excuse me, so small that for the Pochett, for the pocket violin. Excuse my squeaky chair. Very squeaky chair. So what I have here is what is known as a pocket violin, or fancy Pochett. Supposedly it was a dancing master's instrument a while back, and it could fit in a coat pocket and be concealed for some reason. I think certain aspects of society forbade fiddle and pipes and whistles, playing unsuitable music because of the effect it had on people. They sometimes had to be concealed, otherwise severe punishment might be meted out. So what I have here is obviously a modern one. It has a solid pine top with respectable purfling inlay around the edges. It's a carved solid top, as is the back, but it's a single piece figured maple back and maple sides, not badly figured. And the neck is also maple, but not of the same figure quality. And the pegs are ebony, as is the fingerboard, the nut, and the little tail piece. Try and find the camera. there's the ebony tailpiece, and you notice a strange shaped bridge, not the usual, but it has to fan out to be able to give spacing to the player, who would need a bit more space to be able to get their fingers to make it work. The length, the overall length from the top of the scroll to the end of the bottom bout is just over 15 inches. The length of the back, for those interested, is just over 5.5 inches. And I think I measured that the string length, again for those interested, was 9.5 inches or 24 centimeters. And the bow is just a little longer, about 3 inches longer, which makes it about just over 17.5 inches long. So it's held near the heart because it's a bit too small to get under your chin, although one can play it. Obviously, vibrato can't be done in its proper holding position because you drop it, so it has to be held and played with the same fingers, and they have to be very close together, the fingers, because it's a small string length. So I'll have a crack at trying to get some kind of sound out of it. I don't think it would inspire too many dancers nowadays, but depends how much they had to drink or something else. Okay, that's the first Pochett. I have another one I'll play in a little while. It's slightly longer. Okay, here is the other pocket violin, another Pochett. Different shapes, more like a teardrop shape. This one is slightly longer. The full length from the top of the scroll to the end, the bottom bout, is 17.5 inches. The length of the back is 8 inches from here to the end, 8 inches or 20 centimeters. The string length is 10.5 inches from the nut takeoff to the bridge. That's 10.5 inches or 27 centimeters. And the bow length, slightly longer, is 16 inches 41 centimeters. Now I'm going to show you the difference in size to a full-length fiddle. That's quite a bit bigger, doesn't even just about fits in the frame, and that is from the scroll head, top of the head, to the bottom is 25 inches, just under 25 inches, or 62 centimeters, and the back length generally is 14 inches from a full size, which it is, a 14 inch, and the string length on these is very close to 13.5 inches, 34 centimeters. So it's quite a bit bigger, much bigger spaces on the strings, and therefore much easier to play if you have big fingers. If you have little fingers, then of course it's going to be difficult, or if you have a little hand, it's going to be difficult. So back to the pocket violin, or Pochett, again as the dancing masters supposedly used it for dancing. And this has again a pine top with nice purfling on it, and slightly different F-holes. They're not F-holes anymore, they're kind of C-holes. Similar bridge to widen the strings to fan them out for big fingers to play. Has a very nice flamed maple back. Where's the camera? There it is. And also sides. The neck is pretty basic maple, as the head is. And again it has nice ebony pegs and ebony nut and fingerboard and a little ebony tailpiece and a nice little end button with a bit of mother of pearl inlay. And I'm going to attempt to play it. It's still difficult, and you can't really, you can hold it up here. It's a bit more secure, which I might do actually, and might limit some of the mess. So here is a little reel in 4/time, also for dancing. Bus Stop is the tune, and that's the second Pochett. So okay, see what comes up next. Strange one. It may appear at first sight to challenge your imagination. Looks like a walking stick, which it is. It's got a rubber end for the ground. It's got a very nice handle to be able to hold when you're taking a walk. And other than that, other than looking like a very ornate, beautifully made walking stick out of figured maple all the way and brass fittings, when you begin, excuse me, coughing, to take it apart, things begin to be revealed. And what do we have in here? Goodies. Not coming out yet. So I loosen this band that's holding the two halves together. and it's also this end of the stick comes apart, and then some goodies begin to be revealed, secret hidden goodies. And look, oh, that's not so clever. I'll try and edit that out. So what could this be? This is a hidden violin, longer than the others, longer than the Pochettes, which are pocket violins, which can also be hidden away. The string length of this is 13 inches, which is not far from a 3/4 to full-size violin. And then, where's it hiding? Here it is. Here it's hiding a little secret. There's the tuning key inside this end, and out pops the bow. This is quite a modern one with a screw to tighten the strings with a frog. And I'm not sure if it's in tune, so I'm going to tune it and then carry on with the video. Okay, it's a little in tune now, and now I reconnect the handle, which makes it slightly more comfortable to have under here. It's an awkward instrument to play, but another salute to the inventiveness of those that wanted to conceal a violin because of the powers that be and the punishment that might be meted out if caught playing music not approved by certain authorities. So walking stick fiddle. Now I'm trying to put it together again. So here I have a NorwegianHardanger violin, fiddle, obviously made for Norwegian folk music, very beautifully decorated and very cleverly made, because you see there's eight pegs, and a violin normally has 4, and you can see that under the 4 strings, the 4 standard strings, you can see another 4 strings running through the inside of the bridge onto the underneath of the tailpiece. And the purpose of those is derived from the sounds that came from the Viol-d'Amore family of violins, where they had the 4 strings underneath, which run, as you can see, underneath the fingerboard. So the fingerboard and the neck is hollowed out, and a bit difficult to see, but you can see the strings running underneath the nut, and of course then also underneath the fingerboard until they come out the other side, and they vibrate freely. So that takes quite a bit of precision work. The whole design of them, of the shape of the belly, is quite different from a violin, in that this part is much higher than on a normal violin. When you look at it from the top, it looks like an ordinary F-hole, but when you turn it to the side, you can see that it's shaped quite differently and carved quite differently. There inside you can see the bass bar, which carries the bass frequencies of the strings up and down the belly. And then you see standing up on this side quite clearly, whereas on a violin it's a bit harder to see, you can see the sound post standing up inside, which carries the high frequencies to the back. This one I've modified, and I have a Barkusberry clip-on transducer, which means I can then plug it in to an amplifier and make myself heard, or anybody playing it heard. So you tune, there's many tunings for these instruments, and I've just picked the easiest, which is kept it as a fiddle, and randomly tuned the sympathetic strings, not to the best at the moment, to be able to ring in sympathy. So I'll try, look at all the ornate work on it, with all the mother of pearl, and of course the whole fingerboard is laden with inlay, and as the tailpiece as well is also, and the back of the head is also full of hard work, skilled craftsmanship. So I'll put on a shoulder rest to make it more comfortable, and see if I can get a tune out of it, and try and get the sympathetic strings to vibrate. Okay, the Hardanger. Here's a strange contraption. I'll let you have a little look closer first before I say too much. Okay, this is what is called a Strohl, S-T-R-O-H-L, I think. Don't quote me. It's a fairly modern one, and this was developed for the industry, the recording industry that was taking off, I think, in the 20s, where they were using wax cylinders to record sounds, instruments in the orchestra, etc. And the violin, the frequencies were too high and so were very difficult to record in any good measure. And some clever engineer, this guy Strohl, took what was being used as gramophones. This was like the part you put on the record with the needle, and the sound from the grooves in the record would pass through and come out of this long tube, and the wax cylinder could pick up the frequencies much better. And because all the sound was being directed out of the top trumpet, there's a smaller one here to go under the ear of the player so that they can also hear what they're doing. So it also comes out of here as well as there, obviously much louder in a big one. So the proportions are the same as the violin. There's no acoustic body. As you can see, there's a stick, a shaft in the middle. I've modified it so it can be plugged in with a bridge that has a crystal built into it, so it can be electrified if I need to make a noise. The disadvantage of this thing is that it's very heavy, and when you play it for a while, I think you have to drink a lot to get rid of the pain, the shoulder pain. I'm just having a bit of a struggle getting the shoulder rest on so I can maybe get a sound out of it to show you how it sounds. Try and think of a tune that might be suitable. And here we go, Florida Blues. So big racket, great for busking because it can be heard at a good distance, and I've ornamented it with a new fingerboard that's got inlay and little fancy shoulder, chin rest and pegs that all look pretty to make it a little bit more, and a nice tailpiece to make it a little prettier than its standard wise. I got this from a friend, Brian from Lodestone Border Morris, with the intention to play it with the Border Morris. So thanks, Brian, for this. You don't see that. Something yet different again. This is quite futuristic. It's a violin made by Keris and Paul from Bridgewater Violins in Lincolnshire, and it's made of Kevlar and carbon fibre. It's hollow, but it has a unique electronic inbuilt amplifier with a parametric sweep tone control and a volume control, and obviously there's the jack plug input. But otherwise this one is the same specifications as a full-size violin, so it looks different, but it plays exactly the same. Obviously it requires amplification, although because it is electric, it's not made to be like a loud acoustic instrument, although it can be played silently for practice because it is hollow. And because of its design, when you plug it into a big powerful amplifier, playing for 60,000-70,000 people, you have less chance of feedback because it has no hole in it for the sound to cause the feedback. The Levelers, the fiddler from the Levelers, has been playing one for a long time. So has Ian Cutler from Hot Rats and Feast of Fiddles, and they all enjoy the kind of sound you can make from it. Of course, you can effect the sound with all kinds of guitar pedals, and now some pedals made for violin to change the sound to an octave. You can play it so it sounds like a cello, or you can do heavy distortion, but look how cool that is. You know, it's cooler than most guitars. My wife doesn't like the colour, but I think it's quite cool. This is, I've had this for about 15 or maybe even longer years. Don't play it much because I mainly play acoustic stuff. Here is a modern violin made in the traditional fashion with high skills, craftsmanship, again by Bridge Instruments, Paul and Keris Jones and Paul Bridgewater. They have designed these and make them, and you can see the high quality maple, figured maple on the back and the sides and the neck and the head, and they have their unique design. But what makes it quite special is that it's their top of the range golden Tasmin, as they call it, and it has 2 3-volt batteries in there to power up the preamp with a parametric sweep equalizer built in, and the pickup system they've designed is in the bridge, built into the bridge, and they pride themselves on producing the full range of these instruments, and the top performers, both glam rock and classical musicians, use these to excellent effect because of the high quality reproduction of sound. Of course, it's not pure, although it has an excellent sound quality acoustically. When you plug it in to a suitable amplifier, the kind of sound you get when you're playing again to anything from 1,000 to 60, 70, 80, 100,000 people, you need to have an instrument that can perform and have good quality for the sound engineers. And this is what these two people and their company have developed. Again, a very different sound if it's plugged in. So, see what else I can find.